Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, February the 26th, 2026. We're going to call this meeting to order, and the first order of business I'm going to do is I'm going to have the individual members introduce themselves. I'll start to my right.
Jim Flynn.
Dave Remington.
Kelly Barner.
Milind Kanitkar.
Vikram Chabra.
Victoria Pitney.
Thank you. The next on the agenda is to accept the minutes of December the 11th, 2025, December the 17th, 2025 special town meeting, and January 15th, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes unless somebody else has any comments they want to add?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next on the agenda is the town manager's report.
Good evening, committee members. We have no other business besides what's on the rest of the agenda, so we can get into the budget presentation if you're ready. All right, so we'll run through some slides just to kind of reestablish where we are in the process. So this evening we will provide a high-level overview of the budget to kind of set the stage or the high-level perspective of all revenues and expenditures. And then the committee, of course, will begin your more detailed review of individual departmental budgets at your budget hearings. And then on the far side of those budget hearings, final determinations and decisions will be made during the public hearing process for the annual town meeting warrant. So this is the kind of highest level perspective of the financial plan for fiscal year 27, which will start July 1st. The operating budget is, the most detailed and, really finalized at this point. We have a lot of information for the capital improvement plan. I would say it's our initial recommendation, and it will evolve a little bit as we look at any other needs through other warrant articles or other spending, and there may be some capital items that we need to consider that aren't in this original plan, and that would be updated before those hearings on the warrant in April. So what we'll talk about this evening is kind of just a quick look back and tie into the strategic plan and look at some of the accomplishments. We'll look at the overall framework that we built the budget under within the commitments made through the override. We'll talk about our position as it relates to comparable communities that have been established through the Division of Local Services at the Department of Revenue, as well as some surrounding communities that just make sense to compare ourselves to. Talk about the priorities for the budget. Take another look at revenue just to provide the latest, and then actually get into some high-level consideration of the functional areas within the budget, so administration and finance, public safety, human services, community development, and debt this evening. So actually just skip ahead one more slide, Alex. So just looking at the strategic plan, there's 5 pillars within the strategic plan. Very broadly, I think we've done a significant amount of work since the plan was introduced in January of 2023 with developing and refining and continuing to improve a communications program. We have great engagement and always interested individuals for boards and committees. We're increasing our survey responses and really trying to pull people together to make decisions as one and get a lot of feedback into the decision-making processes that we have here at the town and engaging our residents. As we look at this year's budget and we understand where we are in the bigger picture, we do see a balanced budget projection through fiscal year 2029. That would require the use of the override stabilization account, which it's there for, but at least on paper at the expenditure levels and caps that we've been using recently, the budget is balanced through 2029. And then of course, since 2023, this number hasn't been updated this year because we just didn't make any other significant investments, but we've secured about $65 million for infrastructure investments across a wide variety of departments and needs, including water and sewer and utilities and public infrastructure and public buildings. Within the human services area, we've done a lot of building individual programming through the library, through the Council on Aging, automating and improving connections through technology for residents of all ages. We've really increased community events. It was great the other evening. I know the chair was in attendance with us when we cut the ribbon on the new recreation department home at 835 Main Street at the Raystone Post. Thank the committee for your support in putting funding in place to make that renovation possible, and Mr. Chabra was there as well. We've done a lot of work with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have a committee that's up and running and supporting town staff. A lot of achievements in the schools, and of course we've been, through this committee, able to make a lot of investments in public safety and community engagement through the public safety departments. In the prosperous area, which is kind of the economic development side of things, I want to touch on a couple things. Since 2020, we've experienced $320 million in new real and personal property investment in this community. So that's the kind of the business sector within the communities, extraordinary amount of growth in the last 5 years. We've had consecutive years of commercial and industrial property exceeding residential property growth, which is very rare over the long term of this community since we're so residential, such a high residential base. And in fiscal year 25, that year alone, we experienced $72 million in commercial industrial property growth, which is the largest single year of growth within the business sector on record for the town. So a lot of improvements, a lot of commercial growth going on in the community, and also residential growth. Of course, everyone is aware of that. We've reached the major milestone of getting what we believe is 10% subsidized housing in the community, and we're working with the Housing and Livable Cities at the state and looking for a new certification of our total housing inventory that we put in place over the last few years to at least get an interim safe harbor. And then with all this growth in the community and it being 10 years since we've updated our master plan, we're now starting to update that master plan, what land use priorities there are. And of course, there's a specific emphasis that was approved by town meeting, went through this committee to put a moratorium in place on the overlay districts within the community to determine if mixed use should still be an option along the Route 9 and Route 20 corridors. Finally, from the broadest perspective of activities, we've done a lot of work on climate action resilience. We continue to participate in the state's municipal vulnerability program. We've acquired open space, although not recently, but since we've adopted the plan, adopted a local wetland bylaw. And as a little teaser, I can't go into much detail, but we have a major announcement coming up on Tuesday about an environmentally focused initiative that we'll be partnering with the federal government on. So when we look internal to the operations of the town, we are doing a lot of things behind the scenes to improve our efficiency and effectiveness of our operations. This year we launched an employee access portal, which moves a lot of our personnel processes from paper-based systems to digital systems. Ultimately, that will allow us to manage time and attendance and payroll digitally without paper, which currently is a paper-intensive process for us, and will bring consistency to processes across all departments. Moving forward with our budget development, we'll be walking away from our current tool and using, which is a standalone item that we use just for the development of the budget, and we'll be using a resource that we already have in place, part of Munis, our enterprise resource planning tool. So that'll be a savings of $30,000 year over year, and avoiding about another $30,000 because the price was going up that much if we were to continue. And an important initiative through our platform of OpenGov. This year we're standing up an enterprise asset management module. That'll allow us to get really a lot more detailed and time and materials cost, labor costs on the activities that we perform, especially in public infrastructure. It'll allow us to reassess our pavement condition index and be more strategic in our decision makings on preventative maintenance and capital investments in the future. So updated the snapshot associated with the use of our OpenGov, kind of our customer integration, our resident integration for licenses, permits, and all those things. So while records are starting to plateau because we've saturated our business activities and focused it in this area, we can continue to see revenue collections through the system increase, which provides efficiency in those processes versus cash and checks and other means of in-person payment. So moving from that perspective a little bit closer specifically to financials, the select board and school committee made commitments when they asked voters for the $9.5 million override in 2021. And this budget is well within the boundaries that were established in those commitments, certainly exercising fiscal discipline. We're maintaining service levels on the municipal side. We're doing everything that we can to minimize taxpayer impact, and we're working on a couple initiatives that will flow through town meeting that may provide further relief that are currently under development. So I certainly believe that we are maintaining a strong fiscal position, and we'll talk specifically about reserves and asset levels as we work through this presentation. It's an obligation that we have in setting the budget for the fiscal year to do a look ahead, and we're providing a really, summarized look ahead through this slide. And I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but I can orient you on the left side. There is the year that we're working on, fiscal projection 1 for fiscal year 2027, and then there to the right is the next 4 years of out years. So I'll reflect back on my prior comment. Although we would be using stabilization funds, we do show a balanced budget through fiscal year 29, and that would exhaust the funds. We'd over-exhaust the funds by fiscal year 30, and then be in deficit there. So really solid financial position. Yep.
It doesn't include free cash, though. That's just the override fund.
That is correct. Yep. No other use of reserves. Doesn't include general stabilization.
We have how much in free cash again?
We have $12 million in free cash and about $7 million in general stabilization. So here's the override stabilization balance and growth since its inception in fiscal year 22. We have a little over $10 million in there, and that's what we have been setting aside and not spending all the money that we got on an annual basis, putting it into the override stabilization fund for balancing the budget in future year. The general stabilization fund is at policy level right now for fiscal year 26, and we propose a small increase for fiscal year 27 through a warrant article to keep it there. Tremendous growth in this area as well, and I think if you look at these two slides combined, it's really a testament to the recurring revenue strength that's within the community, that we've been able between the two accounts to set aside about $16 million over the last 6 or 7 fiscal cycles that we didn't have as an asset before. Certainly one of them is a direct result of the override itself and capping expenditures, and then general stabilization is really through a lot of diligence and making sure that even when we had higher levels of free cash, that we are permanently setting it aside into this rainy day fund in case we have an emergency or something that we aren't really planning for, that we can maintain service levels or respond to on behalf of the community.
Question. About how much are we putting away in the rainy day fund? Because obviously once we exhaust the other funds, we won't be putting anything away.
Yeah, so the FY27 budget as it stands proposes to add an additional $300,000 into general stabilization.
But we're still below the 5% target, right?
No, so we're at 5%.
We're at
That's to maintain us at 5%.
Yeah. So when we project out using the override stabilization fund, if we exceed your projections on revenue next year, does that mean we can use that additional revenue and not use the override fund? Or are you sort of setting, this is when we need to do the override regardless of our revenue?
I think it can be on a year-by-year basis. The reason that we're not, yes, year-by-year basis. I think we should always look at that and see what the growth is in the community. And from my perspective, as long as the amount of the override isn't growing to something that we think is just complete, like would never pass, and I know that's subjective, that the longer we wait, the less we burden taxpayers, as long as we're maintaining service levels, generally speaking. So we should look at revenues every year. The reason that we don't need override stabilization this year is because of the significant, I think, right sizing is how I would put it, of local receipts and how much revenue we're planning to use at the outset of the year. We'd been pretty far off. Revenues have been coming in at like 130% of budget for the last few years, but this year we're taking a big step and adding about $2 million more in local receipts than we did in fiscal year 26. So that piece prevented us from using override stabilization where we otherwise would have to, and it's clearly the right decision to make. We have that ability, and we're on track so far through this year that that's not a concern, that we're putting ourselves out there too far and that we'll be able to achieve that. So certainly a case-by-case basis, but we would have had to use it this year, so I'm pretty confident we'll need it next year. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yeah. No. Oh, go ahead.
So I see, you have look ahead slide, so what's the anticipated tax revenue that, you're looking or we are looking for from a town, considering the footprint of these projects?
In the slide that's up there now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a total number, but I can talk to you about the lookbacks for sure. When you look at a project like the Edgemere mixed-use redevelopment project, that brings in probably about $1.3 million in annual tax revenue to the community. So that's 250 apartments, and then I think a little less than 200,000 square feet of commercial and retail space within it. So if you look at, and I know it's not on this list, but I think we get about, let me follow through on that thought. It's not on this list, but the property at Lakeway Commons, the apartments there, they're valued about $88 million. So we're raising about $880,000 from them. So you're looking at 250 apartments in this community at on a market rate basis. You're looking at somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million in tax revenue every year from that. Property like Physique Instrumente will bring us like between $250,000 and $300,000 in taxes. So there is a lot of potential revenue in the look ahead section of it. If again, I don't have a total number, but I think what this says to me is that over the last 4 years, we've averaged about $1,340,000 in new growth every year in new tax levy growth, and this tells me that's going to continue. That we should feel really confident in having a new growth projection that is at or the same as what we've experienced over the last 4 or 5 years. That's ranged from $1,315,000 in the low to about $1,645,000 in the highest year over the last 4 years. So I would expect that level of new growth to continue in the community. Now, the caveat is if the economy turns really quickly or something, these are individual private decisions that, any one of the projects could just say that, they're going to stop. But Emerald Run residential development is under construction, so that's well underway. The UPS development is well underway. The further you get down on the list, the more uncertain it gets, though. Yep.
What's up with the Beal project?
They're planning and they're working on their design. They have about another 8 months or so until they actually have to start construction before we could pull the property back from them, but they're working on their plans.
Okay. I was just wondering if they were working on.
I had just one quick question. On the moratorium going forward, if we're able to hold up development for the next couple of years, has that been factored into this look ahead?
It has been. All these projects would not be impacted by that moratorium. So it could prevent other things that we weren't aware of or aren't in the pipeline yet, but none of these on this list.
Thank you.
Gene, I had one
Yes,
question.
yes.
So Kevin, the 1.3 million to 1.6 million number that you're estimating, if things work according to plan, for how many years do you think we could sustain that?
If all these projects move forward kind of systematically as they are in the pipeline right now, I would say 3 to 5 years.
And just to follow up on that,
Ryan?
so 3 to 5 years, and then beyond 3 to 5 years, with these moratoriums and a lot of concern about overcrowding in the town, are there any sort of strategies you're thinking about the town with the select board that we could sustain growth through other means, even if it's not building but commercial activities or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it gets a lot. Unfortunately, the incentive in our revenue system is growth. It is new property and tax-based growth. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be redevelopment, so if you look at the Route 20 corridor, at quick glance, you'd say it's largely built out, but that doesn't mean that, some of the land that's kind of used for truck storage and things like that couldn't evolve into much higher value developments and get more revenue from it. So I think we could have growth within the footprint where there's always where there's already development within the community, but it is a double-edged sword. When we have this growth in the community, it's allows us to put funds away. It's allowed us to not have to ask an override for 6-7 years. But it comes with its challenges. There's certainly costs associated with it, but on par, I think you can see by us being able to put the $10.1 million away in the override stabilization fund is that this development in town is a net positive on, from the new tax revenue that we get. So it's hard to really get creative with revenue in Massachusetts as a local government because we're so restricted. We can't control our own sales tax or modify anything in the property tax. It's all within the general laws, and we just have to follow it. And of course, it's largely capped by Proposition 2.5.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Continue it.
So to put it another way, or to I guess further emphasize that, recently we've done an analysis of revenue growth since the inception of the override. So we didn't include the change from fiscal year 21 to 22 as to avoid the impact of the override on a growth analysis. But what's on the screen here shows from the first year of the override, fiscal year 22, through fiscal year 25 and actual revenues that we raised. And then the compounded average growth rate is in the right for those three fiscal cycles that you see here. So if you look at the tax levy, including new growth and benefiting from new growth, but excluding debt, because excluding excluded debt, right, that we raise money just for debt services purposes, so I pulled that out. We've seen about 4.84% per year, compounded growth in the tax levy. State aid has grown at 2.32% over that same period, with stronger growth in the last 2 years than the first year, so kind of an increasing trend. Local receipts, which we talk a lot about here, has really been exponential growth, or almost 15%. That's not something that I'm comfortable with relying upon, but the numbers are the numbers, and we've made some significant adjustments into the FY27 budget. And then the reduction of the levy, these are, funds that we mainly receive from Selco and from free cash, and I consider them a recurring revenue source. So when we look at recurring revenues, over the last 4 fiscal years and the 3 cycles and doing the analysis, we've seen growth at 5.5% per year on a compounded basis during that time period. So that really says, if we're expending at the levels that are approved in the override, that we're able to satisfy those programmatic needs within the community. Of course, not all these categories are equal, right? The tax levy is the largest, and the net impact of that gets reduced a little bit when the second highest revenue category isn't growing as fast as the top category. But again, overall, about 5.5% growth on average. So that is how we've been able to set some funds aside and go as far as we have since the last override. So taking a step back from the numbers for a couple minutes, I wanted to, put Shrewsbury into context with some comparable communities. So just start with a really general category of population density. Often in local government, the higher the population density, you gain some efficiencies in services, have less road miles per resident. It's just a good starting point as you think about how we compare to these communities and what may be driving some similarities and differences, and just how we stack up. Shrewsbury is the 38th most populous municipality in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, with 351 total municipalities, and we are now the largest representative town meeting population in the state. So that meaning that Plymouth is an outlier because it's an open town meeting and they have a population of about 60,000, but to put it another way, we're one of the largest still town meeting forms of government in the Commonwealth. Most of the other cities and towns that are larger than us are cities, and they work through a city council system. So this is looking at the tax levy per capita, and we're using fiscal year 26 as we do our comparable analysis for the 27 budget. So when you look at total population and total taxes that we raise, you can see our position here, a little less than 3,000 per resident, and fare very well against this DLS set group. Similarly, expenditures, obviously we spend what we raise, so it puts us in a very similar position when we look at expenditures per capita as well. It's a little over $4,200. The average single-family tax bill is very low. I know these first few slides look like we handpicked these communities to be at the lowest, but I promise you we didn't. I think it shows our competitive edge and efficiency that we have when comparing similar communities. So this is showing the DOR income per capita as a percentage of the single-family tax bill. So basically, individual ability to pay the tax bill.
Yes.
Kevin, its comparison is good. I think earlier you mentioned that we are breaching that 10% of that 40B, right? The way I'm linking it, do we know how many of these communities had similar challenges as ours in 40B?
I don't, but that's easy. We can certainly get the subsidized housing levels of those communities and compare.
Right.
Yeah.
And plus, at the same time, the tax, right?
Yep.
Because for good or bad, it's good that, we are breaching that level.
Mm-hmm.
Do you anticipate, considering that we are going to get recertified, there will be in future, some of the projects may not come,
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that?
It's an interesting question. A lot of the growth that has happened, like Lakeway and Edgemere, didn't come in through the 40B process. Certainly, in the end, the Emerald Run didn't come in through 40B. It came in through MBTA communities, but 409 South Street and 104 Main Street and the Elmwood were 40B. So there it's kind of 50-50 on large developments in the community. Just because you're not statutorily subject to 40B doesn't mean that you can't allow development to occur under Chapter 40B. So someone could submit a proposal, even once we're beyond 10%, to use the benefits of and the provisions of Chapter 40B, and it could be something that the select board agrees through the local initiative program or a LIP process, and finds that it's in the benefit of the community to allow that development to happen. So it's not an absolute, closing the door on those provisions. It just means that we have much greater control of saying yes or no.
So when we do these comparisons, I know when Proposition 2.5 was passed, we were sort of behind people on our taxes. So did we hold that position based on that lock of 2.5%? Or is there a change in our position since then? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
were we all locked in at 2.5%, so we kind of just went on that way? Or did we change in our position on this chart?
I don't know off the top of my head how that trajectory since Prop 2.5 went in place. I think that overrides would impact that, of course, because you're overriding those processes and growth. But I know Proposition 2.5, from what I understand of the historical perspective, it did really it is a great point of demarcation that has kept everyone rather similar since that point in time because of its force and limits that it places upon it. But I don't know specifically with this group.
Okay. Yes, Victor.
So Kevin, these comparable numbers, comparable statistics, do other towns sort of reach out to you as far as like trying to understand the efficiencies we have that give us that advantage, or is it something, other reasons like demographics or geographical location of Shrewsbury that gives us a better comparison with communities?
I think it's a lot of factors that gives us this advantage. Location does, and desirability, and public school systems, and all those things drive people here. I think one of the key advantages that we have is that we're a full service community, and we can leverage our utilities and our tax, and those rates, and really be responsible for everything that we do, and that makes us more efficient in many ways. I guess I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
That gives me a direction. Thank you.
Yeah, continue.
so, when it comes to the average single family tax bill, we fall somewhere in the middle of this grouping of folks. Certainly a lot less than the top end of Westboro, and similarly distant from the low end of Marlboro, but probably as the chart shows, right there in the middle. So for this year, it's $8,753 for the average single family home value. Okay, so that takes us through the simple comparisons, just to level set that, and bring us into the full conversation about revenues and then the proposed expenditure plan that I'm recommending. Take this one.
Alright, so on the screen is our most up-to-date breakout of anticipated revenue for FY27. So total revenue is projected at $197,596,611. This is an increase of about 3.02% over FY26. And then just looking at the percentage breakdown, so the largest portion of revenue comes from the tax levy, 60%. 14.5% comes from state aid through the state budget process. Just under 12% is from the utility funds that cover those expenses, salaries, operating, capital, debt projects. And then 10% of revenue comes from local receipts, and then the remaining from free cash, and then other available funds, and then funds to reduce the levy. And these percentage breakouts are pretty consistent And again, this might change a little bit between now and when we get to town meeting. This doesn't include community preservation projects and other warrant article needs that might be identified. So this next slide just further breaks out the information from the previous slide and then shows the dollar amount increase within each category from FY26, and then also just shows the adjustments that were made from the publication of the FY27 revenue manual in November, mostly within the utility budgets based on the needs of those enterprises, and then state aid with the release of the governor's budget, and then minor adjustment in local receipts. So now switching over to the other side of the balance sheet, expenditures, the breakout is as follows. About 48% of expenditures are related to education, 20% to the municipal budget, 13% to shared operating support, which supports both the town and school, 10% to the 4 utility enterprise funds, 6% to debt obligations, and then the remaining tied to various warrant articles, many of which are annual, and then the capital improvement plan, and then state and county charges and offsets. So just breaking it down a little bit further, so this slide just focuses on what we call the municipal and education aspect of expenditures. So the fiscal projection 1 budget recommends a 4.25% increase in education. I do want to note that the superintendent's proposal is 4.75, but in order to get a balanced budget, we're recommending 4.25. The municipal budget, and I want to just call this out, so it's an 8.23% increase. The 4.23% that is over the 4% expenditure cap is directly tied to 2 non-general fund appropriations. And one of those is $1 million in funding for the emergency medical services program. That $1 million is within the fire department budget. And then that also includes about $160,000 in shared costs for the regional public health department, of which we are the lead. So we just need to capture the full cost. But that money does come in as a revenue from West Boylston and Grafton, which are the other 2 participating communities. So if you take those out, the municipal budget is a 4% increase over FY26.
Could I just ask one quick question on that 155.8? That includes the funding from West Boylston and Grafton?
That is what we get from those 2
Okay.
communities, yes.
Any other questions?
All right. And then, so just continuing down, shared operating support, which includes expenditures that support both town and school. The most substantial being employee and retiree health insurance is a 5.76% increase. This is a little bit under the 6.65% expenditure cap. And then, with the declining debt service, debt is anticipated to decrease by 1.27%. And this is $340,000 in debt rolling off from the fire facilities project, but also about $630,000 in debt is coming onto the books for the Rolfe and Maple Force Main project, and that's fully funded through sewer rates.
So if the debt's going down, so we have less debt to pay, does that increase or decrease, does that decrease the taxes that people see? So people will see less tax the bill should go down slightly this year, correct?
It won't go down slightly. The portion that's associated with debt service will decrease, and that it's going down from, just rough numbers off the top of my head, like $700 of that average single-family home tax bill of $8,700 is dedicated to debt. So rolling it forward this year, or to fiscal year 27, it would be about $650 associated with that. You'll still add Proposition 2.5 on top of that, so tax bills will likely go up, but
Right.
they'll likely be going up very similar to what they went up this year, which for the average home was about $250.
So I guess the question I wanted to ask was, is that, say, $50 off the tax bill, or is it still on the tax bill and being used for something else?
It's off.
So it's off, so people can, all right, and that was the question I wanted.
Yep, that is the benefit of excluded debt, is that when the debt is retired, it doesn't get transferred for some other use.
All And so again, this next slide just kind of calls out those non-general fund expenditures, the $1 million for the emergency medical services program. This will be funded within the fire department, but the funding is, will be appropriated from free cash. And then the 155,800, that is the anticipated revenue from the Central Mass Regional Health Department, the other two communities. And so on the revenue side, that is in local receipts, and then just capturing those costs for the shared services.
Could I ask one question on this emergency medical? At the selectmen's meeting, you indicated there are gonna be 4 new hires, EMTs?
8.
8. Are they going to also be firemen or just EMTs?
There will be firefighter, paramedics / EMTs. That is our plan. We are working through the process and everything with the union. We do see value in being able to hire only paramedics or non-firefighters in the initial year to make sure we can get the program up and running. We do know that many paramedics and EMTs are interested in being firefighters, but not all. And since we have such a need of hiring 8, we just want to be as flexible as we can in those early years. No existing firefighters would be required to be paramedics or anything like that. But we need the right mix of people on day one. We need experienced people on day one. But the long-term plan is for it to be mutually beneficial and for, people to be assigned to the ambulance. Hopefully everyone that's assigned to it is wants to be there. But moving forward, the plan would be to hire firefighter, paramedics, but the early days, if we need to staff it, we can't have that luxury of everyone having that designation. It's something that we're talking about.
So really, if you're gonna be hiring 8 new firemen to start off with, and is it gonna be a requirement that they have to continue their schooling or already have that EMT? Or are we gonna end up paying for that portion of it?
Well, we hope that those initial 8 are already at least EMT basics or paramedics, because again, we need them to be working on day one. In the future, we would be committing to helping individuals achieve that and maintain it in the future with their certifications, just like we do most other certifications for firefighters and police officers.
But there's a big difference between a paramedic and an EMT.
It's about a 2-year program, right?
on-
Yep. Yeah.
So there'd have to be, you've got 8 firefighters, you'd have to have at least 4 paramedics. You'd have to have 1 per each shift traveling in the ambulance with an EMT.
That is correct.
Yeah.
At minimum.
Yeah.
And just at minimum, as I'm sure everyone can likely imagine, right? One paramedic wants to take a day off, right? Then we
Yeah.
backfill that. So,
Have you figured out exactly where they're gonna be located? Is it gonna be in the center to start with?
it
or-
is, yes.
It will.
Yep.
And have we got all the necessary facilities there to handle this influx?
The physical building, yes, we do. We have plenty of space for the individuals working the shifts and the bunk space and all that. We have the internal storage space for the associated medical supplies, and then we'd be using the door on the side of the building closest to the cemetery garage to run the ambulance out of.
And how about as far as the administration aspect of it? Are you gonna handle that there too, or? the town
So,
hall?
our plan, along with those 8 firefighter paramedics, would be to have an EMS coordinator as well that would oversee the administrative and staffing of that part of the organization. So it'd be, I don't want to call it a captain, but it would be like a captain equivalent position.
Any other question?
Alright, so we'll go through every department in detail individually, but this slide just highlights the expenditure increases by function area. So administration and finance is a 5.56% increase. Community development functional area is decreasing by about 15.3%. Department of Public Works is a 2.92% increase. Public safety, as you can imagine, is 14.77%. Human services is a 6% increase. Debt is declining by 1.27%, and then again with the proposal of 4.25% in the education department, total bottom line for municipal and education budget is a 4.7% increase.
So I had one comment. From the discussions we've had and what you presented till now, it seems that our revenue growth, the sort of a magical number, is around 4 to 5% every year. I was hearing in the school committee budget, they said that to maintain that level of quality schools, that they're asking about 5% in future increments every year in their budget. So, would it be safe to say that we need, in order to maintain the same quality of services and level of desirability of our town, we have to aim for about 4 to 5% revenue growth every year? And I know you mentioned that it's
Yep.
beyond our control and all that,
Yeah.
but is that our sort of our magic number?
Yeah, I do think it is. I think that, that were, the expenditure caps that we put in place, at the outset of the override. It certainly doesn't give us everything that we want, but I think it's, reasonable within certain means, to be able to cover. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely the sweet spot, is between the 4 and the 5%.
Any other questions? You?
So just quickly touching on the expenditure caps for education, municipal, and shared operating support. So this slide just kind of depicts the dollar amounts that are associated with those. So, of the new funding allowed under the expenditure caps, 56% goes to the schools, 24% to shared operating support, and then the remaining just over 20% to the municipal budget.
How does that break down if you take the shared expenses and put them to schools and municipal? What's the percentages? Like if we said the shared expense for the schools is this, municipal, what do you have a percentage?
It's about 70-30 schools to town, or yeah, around about that.
Okay.
So just focusing on some of municipal budget highlights. So in total, departments were held to a 4% increase, and then again that net result is about just under 1.4 million in new municipal expenditures, and aligning very much with that statistic the town manager noted. 72% of new money is being allocated to salaries and wages, and then the remaining 28.2% to operating expenses. In total, department requests came in about $2.3 million over what was available, so that amount needed to be reduced or cut to provide a balanced budget. Within the FY27 budget, we're proposing a net of 1.5 FTEs that are being reallocated from other funding sources. And so within the Planning and Economic Development Department, this includes about a quarter of an FTE, the Assistant Planning Director position that was previously funded with ARPA. And then it also includes 25% of the second Assistant Planner that in the current year budget is fully funded by planning board fees. It also includes a half FTE within the Council on Aging, so the food pantry coordinator position, $20,000 of ARPA funds were allocated in this fiscal year for that position, and that equals out to about 15 hours a week for that position. The Council on Aging did request this position to be full-time, and we're proposing to fund it at half-time, which does allow for increased hours for that position. So it will go up to about 24 hours a week, up from 15. And then lastly, within the library department, there's equivalent of a half FTE. This is 25% of a reference librarian who was funded in the FY26 budget at a 25-75% split with state aid. So that position will now be 50% in the general fund. And then a head of adult services, which will be a new position, and 25% of that will be in the general fund. 75% of that position will come from state aid. And then we're proposing to fully fund 3 new positions, 2 police captains in the police department, and then a fire prevention inspector in the fire department. These positions will address some critical staffing needs within the functional area of public safety by bridging the command leadership gap in the police department and then shifting to a more strategic, focused approach to fire prevention strategies and code enforcement in the fire department. Just freeing up suppression crews to focus entirely on emergency response and training.
Could I ask one question on the police captains? Are they from within? Do we promote from within to the captains? Are we going outside for those positions?
The promotion and selection process hasn't been determined yet. We're working through the concepts of, civil service and union members and things like that, so it just hasn't been determined. I would say there's, whether they're in civil service or in the union or however that works out, like strong preference to make all hires from within, so I don't see that changing at all, but the nuances in the selection process itself hasn't been determined yet.
Now, are we fully employed as far as the police department goes? Are we still recruiting, or do we?
Yeah, we're in a perpetual state of recruitment with the size of the department that we're in, but, we have a couple people in the selection process right now, but, this is just because of people leaving, we're working to fill, but there's just always a vacancy here or there in the process.
No, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Alex, just on your comments on the the Council on Aging, between what we're funding, and you said state aid picks up in some cases like 3/4 of it, can you just remind me, is that a given? Do we know that in advance? Are we anticipating that?
So those state aid positions, it's library
Yeah.
state aid. So correct me if I'm wrong, like it's separate. It's money that they have
Okay.
carries over that they
Okay.
basically the library trustees, I think, can determine the use of it.
Oh, I see.
It doesn't require appropriation, so
Okay.
it doesn't really fall in the purview of the budget that we talk about.
Great, thank you.
David, do you have?
I don't know if you know this, but as we're getting new police officers in, how many of those are transfers and how many are new?
I would say probably 25% transfers and 75% new. Yeah.
Okay.
So, just quickly touching on, what some of those cuts that had to be made were, and then from largest to smallest, and then by department. So within operating support, this was really mainly due to favorable health insurance premium renewals, and then just, reductions in the police department. They did ask for 2 additional patrol officers in addition to the 2 captains, so I would say most of these are tied to unfunded personnel requests, but also just some reductions, like the town manager mentioned, we're no longer going to be using the ClearGov budgeting tool. That's a savings of about $30,000. It's in the town manager's budget. And then so just highlighting the unfunded personnel requests, and not because they weren't justified.
Oh, you got a question? Go ahead. Norm.
Can I ask one question about the previous slide,
Yep.
the unfunded reduced expenses? So I know you talked about some of the places where we found the operational efficiency, right, or cost reduction. So I just wanted to kind of get that breakdown. Like some of them are real requests, but we couldn't fund it, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's like.
Yes. Yeah.
But then there were some of the things where you renewed or ClearGov in that case, we are finding that as operational efficiency.
Yep.
That's how I treat it. So do we know what is that breakdown look like for this $2.3 million?
I mean, I can tell you, so within management information systems, so this is the portion of the budget that is kind of managed by Selco. So it covers, Selco's service to provide IT services, but it also includes a lot of enterprise-wide software systems. And so, we've seen a lot of increases in software costs, and in order to kind of offset that, they've found some efficiencies, getting rid of things that maybe just a few employees use, and trying to just remove anything that's a duplicate software system, essentially.
I think in future if we can track that I think that would be good.
Yeah, we do. So we do track that, and we're actually working on some data on cost avoidance, cost reductions, and grants that we use. This slide just purely does represent the difference between for the most part, what departments requested and what we're funding, and so it doesn't kind of include that category, but we are working on that to be able to share with folks.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, and then, so again, just touching on new personnel requests that were unable to be funded. All the departments had great justifications for these, and we'd love to be able to do all of them, but we're just limited in what we can do, and just had to prioritize.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Just on that, this might be a little deep, but when we talked a little bit about this in the past. When you can't fill some of the administrative positions, does that work fall back on the existing staff and then get into the analysis of, extended work hours, overtime, things of that nature? Do you get into that level of detail as you try and make these decisions on where it may make sense? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yep. Yeah, it certainly does. I can talk about a couple decisions that we made that we hopefully are avoiding that. So within the building inspector administrative assistant request, is the planning one up here or not? Yeah, the planning administrative assistant. We really think that a lot of those extra burdens that are on that are being identified for that requirement will be covered by the fire inspector's position, because there's a lot of overlap between the building inspector and
Right.
fire department when it comes to fire inspection and prevention. I think most of the rest of the positions are kind of program or the frontline workers, and certainly it does mean that the higher program burden is shared by existing staff, or new things just don't happen, right? So new things just don't happen, like council on aging, outreach coordinator and program coordinator, or just representing things we're not going to get to that the
Right.
department head thinks would benefit the senior community. The same with recreation, like an assistant director would allow for more planning and program development and sponsorships and things like that. Fleet is definitely an area that will mean more burden on existing staff, but also in some cases contracting out some of the work that we'd have to do, or longer delays for PM type work. So I would say most of the positions on the list means work that we're not going to get to versus spreading it over.
Okay, that's helpful.
And I don't see a great, so to the one comment you made, like I don't see a great impact on overtime or extra costs with those staff.
Yeah, I mean, even just to dive deep, I'm not suggesting this, but just as, the demand grows. What stuck out to me, Kevin, was the last one, like the accounting.
Yeah.
Like that's an important function. Like
Yes.
one FTE at 90K, that's.
Yeah.
th-
Yeah, it-
That's market, and there's a lot of work that goes into what that person may be doing that may have to be spread thin, so. But you answered it.
Yep.
I understand what you're getting at. That's helpful. Thank you.
All right, so the next few slides will drill down into the functional area departments. So starting off with administration and finance, not a ton of changes. The reduction in the town manager's office is related to one-time funds that were appropriated in FY26 for some efficiency and optimization work. All of operating support is within administration and finance. So this includes health insurance and our general insurance policies, as well as IT services. Again, the increase in management information systems IT is most directly related to some software and subscription costs. many of which are just unfortunately playing a little bit of catch up on price increases that all seem to be happening at the same time. And then lastly, I just want to note the elections and registration budget, the increase of 59.18%. This is directly due to there being 3 elections in FY27 compared to just the 1 local election this fiscal year. So that's mostly tied to salaries to pay the election workers, to be able to staff early voting, and then police details as well for polling locations.
Chair?
Yes.
Is Shrewsbury using or looking at using any type of AI to gain efficiencies? Like Copilot or Claude or,
Yeah, so we have Gemini,
okay.
because we're a Google shop, and what we're doing, we're working towards eliminating the use of other, tools, because Gemini is safer and it stays within our environment, and then we hope to be able to use it better for organizational knowledge and support.
So
So
moving,
just a follow-up, so we have, we're running it internal and not going to the cloud for?
That's correct. Yep.
Alright, so moving into community development, again, not a ton of changes. The reduction in the planning and economic development department of just over 190,000 is again related to one-time expenditures that were appropriated in the FY26 budget. Those were specifically for the master plan update and then a little bit to continue climate action implementation. And then this is also reflective of the 25% of the assistant planner and then approximately 20% of the assistant director position. And then the building inspector increase is mostly just allocated to a cost of living adjustment for those staff.
Questions?
Alright, so now moving into the Department of Public Works, this is excluding the utilities. The Public Buildings Division is increasing by just under 6%. This is mostly related to increases within the utility lines of natural gas, electricity, and then some anticipated costs for renewals of cleaning contracts. The reduction in the engineering division is again tied to one-time expenses. So in the FY26 budget, we appropriated about $100,000 for surveying work, and that money will carry forward. We will not come close to spending that in this year, so it'll carry forward and will likely be in place for a couple years. And then just touching on the increase in fleet maintenance. So this reflects the consolidation of all automotive expenditure lines within DPW into fleet maintenance. So public buildings, engineering, highway, cemetery, and parks maintenance all historically had their own individual lines for automotive. The expenditures were still being managed by fleet maintenance, so this is just kind of a cleanup to get it all into one division that is already managing the maintenance of those vehicles anyway. And so just touching on that, so you'll see the reduction in highway. Highway is the largest automotive line. They have the biggest fleet, so that reduction is, again, that it's about $160,000 that historically has been their automotive line that's now in fleet maintenance.
And just while we're on that, so our enterprise asset management system will allow us to still track individual vehicles and understand the costs that are being incurred by the specific divisions, but it means that the fleet maintenance division doesn't have to use appropriations from outside of their own division to cover the work that they do.
The street lighting budget, which pays for all street lights, public street lights, and then the street lights at SAC Park, which is a polling location, is going up 20%. Through working with Selco, we've worked on a plan to kind of make the other electricity lines go up less. So the bottom line increase on electricity will be 5%, but in street lighting, it's gonna be 20%. In public buildings, it's about 2.5%.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Alex. Just on that one though, is that primary driver the cost of like just the electric itself? Because didn't we go through an initiative that changed all the streetlights? And that would,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't go up, but
Yeah.
that seems pretty significant when you look at historic. Is there any, can you add any color to that, or is that?
Yeah, so my understanding is the streetlights are not actually metered, so it's always been an estimate.
Okay.
So this is just moving towards being a more accurate
Okay.
number of what the streetlights cost.
Going back to fleet maintenance, with the consolidation, were we able to reduce staff, or do we have to increase staff? It looks like, there's a lot. 117, 151 was given back to fleet maintenance, and then 172 was the additional budget that fleet maintenance had.
So the 117 reduction in engineering is not related to automotive.
And highway, none of that comes out of that.
That's related to automotive. Yep.
But it didn't impact the total expenditure levels for this year. Once we have it all under one roof and can assure it, maybe it'll change it next year.
No, I was just
Yeah.
wondering if,
Yeah.
I know still the fire department still does their own maintenance
Right.
on the trucks.
Right.
So we have someone,
Yep.
be nice to have everything in one
Yeah.
spot.
Yep.
We're still
and this,
working towards that.
Yep, and this doesn't include the police department either, but just DPW as a whole was just the first step.
Have we found any issues with the electric cars for maintenance in the police department?
No. Ours have been pretty good.
I know we've had some out of service, and I'm sure the tires go a lot quicker.
We have stuff out of service all the time, so not just electric ones.
Yeah, and we're not exclusively buying hybrids, for the department either. It's, we're making that on an acquisition by acquisition basis and timeliness, so, not every new cruiser is a hybrid.
What's the makeup between hybrid and non the last?
I don't know what the.
We'll have
what
to,
it is right now.
we'll be
We can find out.
prepared to answer that.
I'll just add one thing, talking about the vehicles, looking at the capital expenditure. Why have we got 2 or 3 different models? What was the objective there?
You're talking about the police department's
Yeah.
request. So I believe 2 of them are going to be unmarked cruisers. I think one is actually for the chief.
What does that have to do with the model and the up
That's a good question.
with,
I don't know. but
I mean,
we'll have to
Ask
look.
the chief.
some were the XL and the others were the Explorers and,
We'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
No.
and the other thing, just one more comment to the electric. Ford, which we buy most of all our cruisers, they're phasing out right now for next 2 or 3 years on all the electrics.
We don't have any fully electric
No.
vehicles in the police department. Yep.
But we do have electrics throughout
We do.
the rest of the town.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few.
Yep.
None of them are a Ford. I don't think the
There
town
was-
owns any Fords. Or Chevys.
Not plug-in, not hybrids,
not-
or not plug-in electrics. I have lightning. And water and sewer.
Oh, we do have lighting.
Okay, and then just lastly, cemetery and parks maintenance. Those net increases are mostly just tied to the cost of living adjustment.
So I do, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So when we allocate these, if they're not used by the end of the year, we de-obligate, they go back into the general fund? Or do they carry forward? Because you had to carry forward before, so are they re-obligated out or are they carried forward into the departments?
So, the comment I made about carrying forward about the surveying work, so that's in a 9 account,
Okay,
and so that 9 accounts in particular can carry forward year to year.
and so like the money allocated to the finance committee, if we don't use it by the end of the year, it does not get carried over. It gets de-obligated, put back into the general fund, then reallocated to the new process.
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
When, as Alex said, when we're looking at the line item budget, right, they're you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? We use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 9. The 9s are the only line items that get carried forward, or classifications that can get carried forward. And we, you know, the biggest one that we probably have in the budget is like building repairs in the public buildings department. You know, $400,000. We're gonna need repairs at some point. And then when we do these multi-year contracts to make sure we have enough money in place, and then we just draw down upon that until we run out.
Right. So they're just 9-year money.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it is non-year, and it's probably, I mean, it's a tiny percentage. I'd be surprised if it's a 10% of the whole budget that sits in those type of accounts.
No, thank you for the clarification.
So moving into public safety, again, some pretty significant investments in this functional area. 2 new positions in the police department and 1 position in the fire department. And then again, this does include the $1 million for emergency medical services. And just for context, if you back out that $1 million, the fire department increase is about 5%. So the retirement budget, this is level service with the increased amount that was approved at the fall special town meeting. So the kind of new baseline of $3.1 million.
And do you expect that to be every year?
Yes.
Okay.
For about 7 years, I think, and then we'd be fully funded again according to the current schedule.
When is our next actuary due?
It's in process right now because we do it as of January 1 every year. So they're working on it. And we'll probably have it in the April timeframe.
So moving into human services, so public health, just want to note the decrease. So in the in the FY26, between the department request, that was comprehensive, full needs. This is being offset with some grant funds that are available to use to decrease those costs. And then within the Council on Aging, this includes the additional half FTE for the food pantry coordinator position. So that position is in the general fund, and again at the increased hours. And then the library budget, this includes some, again, software cost increases for some software costs that they have specific to the library, as well as the phased funding for the 2 positions, and then cost of living adjustments for those staff. And then lastly, the recreation department, this increase is mostly tied to the amount of supplemental funding that is in this budget to support summer camp staff. So historically, about 5% of the total cost of summer camp staff has lived in the recreation general fund budget, and then the rest was supported by the revolving account. We are proposing just to increase that from $5,000 to $20,000 to help keep costs low and allow some opportunities to make the program more accessible.
Can I ask one question on Council on Aging? Is that all wages, that 46?
Yes.
So that's part-time?
That's the part-time position and cost of living adjustment for all the existing staff.
Okay, so there's benefits included in that too, then?
That position will not be eligible for benefits based on the number of hours.
But those would be in operating support anyhow if they were, but yeah.
I have a question, Gene. Alex, on recreation, it seems like there's a lot more offerings. Are you seeing the demand there grow over time? Obviously, we get the new facility. And when you talk about hiring,
Yep.
is it, maybe it's meant for Laurel, but like, do you hire high school kids, like in the summertime? Is that how it kind of works?
I think so, high school,
Yeah.
college students.
Okay.
Yep.
But that program's, it's significantly increasing in terms of options, right? It's not just like basketball, rec leagues, you see a ton of things
A lot of stuff.
that they're offering, and you're seeing that demand, and they're fulfilling some of those, options.
And I mean, just to kind of comment on that, like this departmental budget, like that 432,000,
Mhm.
that is mostly just the full-time staff salaries. You know, everything else is really fully supported by the revolving account and their program fees.
Nice. Thank you.
All right, so just moving into debt. So debt, again, declining year over year, and the exempted levy is also declining. So the amount of the tax bill assigned to debt will decrease by about $50. So the next few slides will move into the four utility funds, and I just want to note that specifically the capital plans for mostly water and sewer are still just being flushed out a little bit. With the exception of solid waste, the utility funds receive their own revenue to cover their own expenses, so they'll just be working those through the next couple of weeks. So I'll start with solid waste. So this proposal does include revenue projections that get closer back to a 50-50 split in the FY26 budget. Again, given the challenges, the tax levy is 60% of the solid waste enterprise, and this proposal is to get to 53%, but would require a 17.9% increase in bag fees. So this is just something that between now and town meeting, town staff and the select board will just need to work through.
Could I ask one quick question on stormwater? Is there any in reserve funds in that particular account?
Stormwater, I want to say, has about 2.5 million in retained earnings. I just confirm that.
Because when we originally got into the stormwater, we were gonna build a reserve because at year 5 or 6, there was gonna be a large expenditure, and we didn't want it to hit the taxpayers all at once. And I don't remember the year.
Yeah, you're right. It was in year 6 we were going to start spending down. So Alex will look up the amount of money that we have. We are working towards meeting the obligations of our permit that we have with the federal government, but the approach that we're taking right now doesn't require a major capital investment. It's more managing extra street sweepings and phosphorus, levels within our water bodies. So it hasn't required any significant capital investment like mechanical cleaning of the water at any source point. So that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but we have sufficient funds on reserve, and we're receiving sufficient funds and revenue, and the growth within the community has brought us more revenue than we anticipated in this area as well. So we're okay for now. It doesn't mean we won't have to increase rates at some time, but we're fine.
In the lawsuit, will we have a part of the lawsuit against the federal government to see if there would be reimbursements of,
No, we never engaged in that.
we never engaged in
No.
it? Has that ever been settled?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so as of July 1, 2025, stormwater retained earnings were certified at just over 2.7 million.
How much?
2.7 million.
Thank you.
Alright, so the water enterprise proposes a water rate increase of 3.5%, using a little bit more retained earnings than we're using the FY26 budget. And then we've also identified about 460,000 in warrant article closeouts. These are projects, mostly capital projects, that have been funded over the course of the last few years. Those projects are complete and can be closed out, and so these will mostly go towards supporting the $1.26 million capital improvement plan within water. then sewer enterprise, so this one's still being fleshed out a little bit, mainly because to support the operating budget and the capital improvement plan that they would like to see, sewer rates would need to increase by 10%. I don't think this is where it's going to land. I think it'll be maybe closer to 5%. They're also doing an exercise to review some warrant articles that can potentially be closed out to, again, further support their capital investments. And then this does also include the new debt of the Rolfe and Maple Force Main, so that debt of about $630,000 is factored into the sewer rates. So that is it on fiscal projection
Any
1.
additional questions? I have one. Shrewsbury Youth Services. What is the amount, and I couldn't identify where it was.
So it's a separate warrant article that we have.
Yeah, it's so in the book, it should be listed in the revenue section of free cash. That's what supports that warrant article, and it's $350,000.
Okay, just one follow-up on it now. Where another town or two are growing into this organization, what are they gonna be contributing?
You can get those numbers for Westboro's contribution. I don't think there's any other towns, but we can get Westboro's contribution.
Any other additional questions? I think that was a great presentation. That could be a great summary of the whole thing. Okay, the next on our
Are we gonna talk about, are we going to the capital warrants or no? Not tonight?
I mean, if you have questions, I can.
No, but if it's
Yeah.
not, I mean, if it's not set, there's no
Yeah, each
reason.
department will talk about their capital investments, and their, it isn't 100% set yet. But,
Because there's, in the beginning it was 2 million, and then it's like 2.3 later on.
yeah.
So is it just in flux right now?
So the reason why it's still only $2 million of free cash as of right now to be used for the capital improvement plan. That additional about $400,000 has been identified by old warrant articles, old projects that are done, complete. Because of the way that town meeting appropriates and votes on the capital improvement plan, it's very specific. So town meeting needs to then close those out, and then they can be transferred to the capital improvement plan. So say, for example, the fire department has a capital project for a vehicle replacement. That can't be used to support a public buildings capital project. But if that project's done and they're not going to use those funds anymore, the project can be closed out, and then we take that balance and basically apply it to the capital plan.
So it's really a 1.6 million net, if you're getting $400,000 back off a $2 million, or is it $2 million plus the 400,000 you're gonna use?
$2 million plus the 400.
Okay, so it's really,
Yep.
we have capital of like 2.3, 2.4 million.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? Then I guess we review the meeting schedule. Is there anything additional, new, or everything is still set in stone? So,
Everything is still set in stone. We will be working on the schedule for which town departments will be coming in on Tuesday or Saturday. And then again, it will be school only on the Thursday date. And just to touch base on the conversation we had at the workshop, so town staff have submitted one-page summary sheets on, their departmental highlights. And so those will be shared with the committee probably by early next week. And then I'm also working on a template to be able to compile any questions you may have on those one-pagers.
on these three March dates, the 17th, the 19th, and the 21st, you want to give us some starting times too?
Sure.
You
So
can add to that?
I would propose a 6 o'clock start time on the 17th and the 19th, and then 8:30 a.m. on the 21st.
On the 19th, 6 too,
Yes.
and 8:30 on the 21st?
Yes.
You want to go on to the April 9th and 16th also, or?
Gene, one question.
Yes.
Do we know the order of the departments yet, or is that still being worked out?
Still being worked out.
Do we want to?
School, I'm sorry, Gene.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we dedicated the 19th to the schools, is
Yes.
that's locked down?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Will only be schools that day, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to be clear, those are public hearings, so anyone who's watching this at home, they can come in, they can speak about these items on those every day, correct?
That is
Yeah,
correct.
all of them.
Just need to get that out there.
And how about April the 9th and the 16th? You want to go that far out right now as far as times go?
Yeah, I would also recommend 6 p.m. for both of those, just given the history of how many articles we've had to go through.
I guess we're going to have to serve a light supper.
You have to put in the finance committee budget.
Okay.
Do we not expect to need a Saturday for the town meeting warrant,
That's the plan.
hearings?
Oh, no,
Then-
not for the warrant, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
the two
just those two
Thursdays, okay.
Okay. Any further discussions on meeting dates? No? Is there any other business?
So I'm watching the school committee, they were talking about the tri-board meeting again. I know we had spoken about that a few times. Is there any discussion about that internally, or?
Yeah, so we have worked with the select board since the last time you met, and they're working on a timeline for an overall financial conversation that does have a tri-board meeting in it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Are they looking at that before the whole budget meetings or after? What's the time frame they're looking for?
I'm not, as far as the budget hearings, it would be after the budget hearings.
So it's really for next year planning.
Yes, I think it's more for long-term planning.
Well, I do think we asked for it for this year. We asked for it a couple times. And is it the select board that doesn't want to do it? Is it the school committee?
I don't think anyone doesn't want to do it. I think it's, I mean,
Prioritize
so
it.
you want to talk about, well, I mean, I'm working with the board to get it set up. I have no control over the school committee. I'm not saying the school committee's the issue. You know, is it, I mean, I guess it's a question. I didn't know, was it FY27 request to talk about the FY27 budget?
It was, because that's the one thing we're talking about. We're approving these things at the end. Now, it's probably too late now, I'll agree with that, but the idea for us is to get in the whole mix of how they're doing the budgeting, so we can, and what they're prioritizing themselves, and be like, in a tri-board meeting where we can actually ask questions and be more interactive at that process, early on in the process. You know, obviously, we're not gonna tell them what they can and can't do, but we're gonna see, you want 4.5%, increase in your budget. Yeah, your priorities sound good. And it's better than, it's easier to do that than in the public hearings where they speak to us. I just think having the whole board and having an informal conversation would make that easier.
Well, I think the positive portion of it is that we're going to have them one particular night. So we're going to have time to get into it in a little more detail
Right,
than
we
we
won't have
normally
the
would,
select board
being
there,
pushed
yeah.
along on a timetable where we were set.
Oh, no, I agree. I think
Yeah.
I think I was the one that proposed the extra day too.
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering because it's 6 p.m. But
No, I
Yeah.
agree.
But yeah, I think it's good for that. I was just talking about sort of the whole process, getting the boards together to coordinate and work together early on.
Yeah.
I think would be better. We could give them our feelings of what we think, from our perspective, what we think is important.
And I think maybe one of the better approaches is kind of more like a workshop type thing than a meeting.
Well, that's
because
what I was
I think we
thinking.
accomplish a
I
lot
agree.
more.
I was thinking
in
the
a
tri-board would
workshop
be like that.
aspect of it than we do in a,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The tri-board would be more of a workshop.
yeah.
We had one last year, I think, before one point. It's that type of things that
as long as we have, I mean, everyone goes in with an agenda, like we have an agenda sheet. I think if we go in, we don't have, what are we here for? Are we here for 2027, 2028, long-term, the next override funding agreements? What is the meaning and purpose and goal of that? Because I felt the last one we did, there wasn't as much as I would like to see a specific goal. We kind of spoke about a bunch of stuff, and I'm not sure a whole lot came out of that. So I would like to see very specific. Are we going here to talk about our opinions about the future? Are we talking about a specific year? Are we talking about specific issues like the fees? That's what they brought up at the meeting. To talk about the fees, and hey, we'd like to have a tri-board meeting on it. Great. If that's, then we'll talk about that. But I think that's one thing we really need to do is, this is what we're talking about, and let's not go down a rabbit hole.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
In my view, would be to get, we've seen some of the budget, but get that process going.
Right.
Right.
Excellent.
That's all.
Anything else? No? We do have some correspondence from Dr. Sawyer. That was regarding the school budget presentation. We also had an email from Chris Gerard, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operation, again, budget recommendations. Any other business? We'll have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night. Thank you
Good
very
night.
much.
Thank you.